We have a long way to go before House of the Dragon returns to HBO, but that isn't the only Westeros show in the kitchen right now. Here are all the Game of Thrones spin-offs that are presently in the works, starting with the new Jon Snow show. Can we call it the Jon show? Well, considering we don't know much about it right now, I think it would be right to say that we know nothing about Jon Snow.
I was good. So, when David and Dan, the writers, told me, they said, you can't tell anyone now. And you can't tell your mum, you can't tell your dad, you can't tell your brother, you can't tell your friends. No one.
Now, recently is a relative term since the show was revealed by HBO almost a full year ago. At the time, all they had to say about it was that it was going to be a sequel and it would feature Jon Snow. The character, reprised by Kit Harington, was last seen venturing beyond the wall after taking the black one more time, having killed Daenerys, his aunt and his lover. The man who would be Aegon Targaryen left behind his inheritance. But that's all we know about the show right now. All we have beyond that is to wonder what's happening next. It's safe to say that the show will follow up on the state of affairs in Westeros, which used to be the Seven Kingdoms before the North became independent. There are other threads left open too. Arya went off to gallivant across the continents, and Maisie Williams has said that she'd be down to return to Westeros if asked. Bran is also looking for Drogon, the last dragon in the world. Jon has some dragon riding experience now, which might come into play. But while we may not know much about this show, with the next one, we have a more concrete idea of what's coming. The Tales of Dunk and Egg. This is another one of George R.R. Martin's dormant novel projects. It was meant to feature novella collections like A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which follow the hedge knight Sir Duncan the Tall and his squire Egg. Here's the thing though, Egg is the nickname of Aegon V Targaryen. This series is reported to be in early development since 2021. It takes place about 90 years before the events of Game of Thrones. While Egg's life ends with an event literally called the Tragedy of Summerhall, this series will follow the tone of the novellas. The vibe is all about Egg traveling around Westeros with Dunk and learning about how the people live throughout the realm that will someday be his. Lighter, breezier, and more humorous, the show would be a counterweight to the bleak and dire circumstances we saw in Thrones and House of the Dragon. All this is assuming, of course, that Tales of Dunk and Egg even comes out. George has said that he doesn't want there to be an adaptation of Dunk and Egg until he's finished writing the novellas, of which there will be anywhere from 6 to 12, probably collected 3 apiece in volumes. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is nearing its 10th birthday now, so I wouldn't advise you to hold your breath for this adaptation to happen, but don't lose all hope. Here's a more likely adaptation: The Golden Empire. Yep, if you're a big enough fan of the series to have read lore books like The World of Ice and Fire, the name of the Golden Empire might be familiar. This is the nickname of the Empire of Yi Ti, a realm that exists in the far east of Essos. Described in the lore and in some animated DVD and Blu-ray extras, Yi Ti is George's take on Imperial China. HBO is supposedly working on an animated show about the Golden Empire, and sneaking in a reference to it in House of the Dragon might be a sign that things are full steam ahead. As of the events of Game of Thrones, Yi Ti is a lot more prosperous than any of the empires to the west. It has loads of cities, and those cities are bigger and more splendid. I wonder what George's Imperial China would be like. For one thing, dragons are more than just a myth in this version of Chinese culture. Now, I'll also mention that HBO is developing a second animated show, but details are scarce. I mean, they're scarce about the Golden Empire too, but at least we know what that show is going to focus on. I feel like we've been talking too much about shows that are unknown and hidden on the shelves of the HBO workshop. So why don't we move on to some more concrete stuff? How about the sea snake? As any watcher of House of the Dragon would know, the sea snake is the moniker of Corlys Velaryon. Long before he became the stoic and ambitious head of House Velaryon, he adventures around the world, seeing things few in Westeros have ever gotten to see. In fact, the truckloads of riches he brought back to Driftmark from those adventures are the reason why the Velaryons are so loaded. It's also why they field such a large navy, that the ruling Targaryens depend on their allegiance so much in House of the Dragon. If you thought it was a shame that all this stuff was just Corlys' backstory, HBO has got you covered. The Sea Snake is going to be a series that follows Corlys throughout his travels around the world, so you're going to see all those things that only Corlys has seen. With this show, we know that it's an active development, and Brian Heller, co-creator of the show Rome, is on the creative team. I think it's safe to say that Steve Toussaint will reprise his role as Corlys in The Sea Snake. If that's the case, the show might be coming out sooner rather than later, since Toussaint would want to fulfill all his HBO commitments ASAP. It could well be the first of all the spin-offs in this video to make it to your screens. And while we're on the topic of shows that might be coming out soon, I have one last show for you that might come out in the near future, and it's called 10,000 Ships. We're going way back in time for this one, basically before Aegon's conquest. Over 1,000 years before the events of Game of Thrones, the Rhoynar people used to live on Essos. You might recognize it from the annoyingly long title of the ruler of Westeros. When dragon riders from the Valyrian Freehold, yes, this story will predate the doom of Valyria too, launched a war against the Rhoynar people, they eventually realized they couldn't win. Among those Rhoynar was Princess Nymeria, and she decided that she and her people needed to get the heck out of Dodge. Embarking upon 10,000 ships, Nymeria led her people out of Essos and sought refuge with Dorne in Westeros. Marrying Prince Mors Martell, the ruler of Dorne, Nymeria decided that this would be the new home of the Rhoynar, and she went on to burn all those ships. If that sounds super dope to you, you'll get to see the story play out on screen before long. Amanda Siegel from Person of Interest has been tapped to create the scripts for the series. This is another show that I think we'll get to see before long. 10,000 Ships and The Sea Snake wouldn't really step on the toes of HBO's flagship fantasy drama House of the Dragon, the way something like the Jon Snow sequel would. I'm guessing that these last two shows might come out in the next few years. But when do you think we'll get to see these shows? And which ones are you most excited for? Roar your opinions in the comment section down below.